In a moment, we will meet Jacob, a young boy with dreams of traveling the cosmos. We will join him at a pivotal moment in his life where he discovers that sometimes there may be unknown passengers along for the ride. A loud noise causes Jacob to kick out of his sleep. He snatches his head off of his pillow and quickly bounces into an upright position on his bed, eyes wide in an attempt to push aside the darkness which was the only obvious barrier between his eyes and the culprit. He panned his head around the room. Shadows on the wall, which were once cast by mundane objects, now suddenly seemed eerily sinister under the strain of the current atmosphere. Jacob wanted to scream for his mom, to have her kick the door open and rescue him from all of the unknowns that lay just below the edges of his bed. I'm a third grader, Jacob thought to himself. I shouldn't be scared of things like this anymore. As he sat there, reassuring himself that there was nothing to be afraid of, he began to calm. The edges of the shadows seemed to soften, and the faint light that eased in through the Spider-Man curtains appeared to brighten with each positive thought. He laid back on his bed and rested his head down on his pillow. See? He told himself. Quit being a little kid, Jacob. He smiled and began pulling the sheet up to his chin. His eyelids grew heavy and his breathing slowed as he began to drift off into a sleep that he was yet to realize would never come. His ears perked up as the sound of scratching came from across the room. His chest was frozen mid-breath, his mind scrambling to pinpoint where the noise came from. A loud, thundering sound shoved what little silence remained into submission. Jacob's eyes widened as he leaped upward from under his sheet to a standing position on his bed. His arms stretched outward as though he were balancing himself on a tightrope. The sounds had stopped, but they did not take with them the fear that had now engulfed young Jacob. Every muscle in his legs were alive as he slowly eased himself toward the edge of his bed, trying his best to make no noise of his own. He could see his superhero slippers on the floor now. This gave him a goalpost, a proverbial save point like in the games he loved to play. He was easing a leg down onto the floor as the scratching began again. Only this time it was more aggressive. It caught Jacob off guard. He abandoned all of his plans to go stealth and instead leaped down onto the floor, his bare feet crashing down right on top of what could only be described as a soft sanctuary. The feeling of having his slippers under his feet gave him an odd sense of comfort. He didn't quite understand it, but he wasn't ready to question it either. With his newly gathered battle gear adorned, Jacob slowly turned his body towards the source of the noises. His closet door. This may have been the first time Jacob ever experienced the feeling of intrusion, for behind that door was his hidden oasis, his clubhouse, the one place he had that even his family respected and would never invade without him knowing. He would climb inside his closet time machine and close the door. There, the world was his to control. He called himself the captain, and his ship, the DeLorean 2. Only tonight, the DeLorean 2 had a new driver, and Jacob did not quite feel like its captain. This notion was unsettling, yet at the same time it provided him with some much-needed anger, which served as a well-received replacement for the nerves that were lacking in this moment. He stood there, facing the door to his closet, his heart thumping against his chest. The hair on his head was tingling with excitement as he stretched out his arm toward the shiny brass knob. The cold of the metal handle on his skin made him gasp. Jacob, tightening the grip of his small hand, his breathing increasing as he tried to pump himself up to turn the knob. A loud bang emanated from within the closet. In a flash of reckless abandon, he cranked the handle and flung the door open wide. This sucked the air out of the closet with such ferocity that everything inside suddenly sprang to life. The clothes were dancing amidst the chaos. All of Jacob's drawings that he kept safe in his time machine were now snatched up from their slumber. He took a couple of slow steps backwards as he followed the back and forth motion of the papers as they came to rest at his feet. He could feel the darkness in front of him staring, inviting him in with its silent allure. The door to his time machine had now become the mouthpiece to a terror he had never imagined until this night. Maybe this is too much for a third grader, Jacob thought to himself. I should get Mom. Just as he was making the decision to go towards his bedroom door, a tiny light flickered across the bottom of his closet like a laser beam. With this light came more scratching, and with the scratching, more banging. It sounded as though something was trapped and trying its best to escape. He wanted so badly now to just run out of his room and to his mother, who would know exactly what to do. Yet there was something intoxicating about all of this. Maybe it was Jacob wanting so desperately to prove he was more than just a little kid, more than just a proclaimed third grader. After all, he is the captain, regardless if his ship had been hijacked or not. He edged himself closer to the dark entryway of his closet, kneeling down on all fours in an attempt to peek around the edge of the molding. Just as his head was about to cross the threshold, all of the noises stopped. The flicker of light ceased. Jacob paused and drew in a deep breath. He peered around inside, but somehow everything seemed normal again. He began pulling together some of his drawings that lay on the floor around him, crawling inside to tuck them back under the seat of his ship. Maybe I'm just scaring myself? Jacob asked himself. He shook his head and rested his back against the inner wall of the closet. The DeLorean too is mine, he smiled. Light shot from the wall like a sideways tractor beam. Jacob's head snatched to the right as his eyes traced the beam of light to a small hole in the wall. No sooner than his eyes made contact, the light was gone and the closet door slammed shut. Maggie's attention was pulled away from her movie as the loud bang echoed through the upstairs of their apartment. "Jacob!" she yelled out. There was no answer. She paused her movie and decided to go check on her son. As she made her way up to his bedroom, she noticed what sounded like scratching, growing louder as she drew nearer to the door. "Jacob?" she yelled out again, in hopes that he would answer, but again there was no response. Maggie opened the bedroom door slowly, peeking through the small opening, her shadow stretching across the room and coming to rest at the edge of Jacob's bed. She expected to see her son tucked underneath his Spider-Man sheets, but the sheet was on the floor, stretched out like a trail which led straight to the closet door. "Jacob!" Maggie yelled with a much more agitated tone this time, as she flicked on the light. Jacob was nowhere to be seen. The scratching began again. This time it was from inside the closet. She ran to the door and ripped it open. "Jacob!" She lunged forward, shoving the clothes out of her way, frantically searching around for her son. Jacob was sitting against the wall, pointing to a spot opposite his side of the closet. Maggie tried to grab his hand and pull him to her, as she could see that her son was visibly shaken, but Jacob resisted and began gesturing to his mom to look. She turned around to find a small hole about 2 feet off of the ground. Drywall dust was sprinkled about the floor just below it. She looked back at her son. "You need to look, Mom," he told her. She crawled toward the hole, not knowing what to expect. As she got close, she paused, gathering herself and taking in a deep breath as she leaned in, placing her eye up to the hole in her son's closet. On the other side of the hole was a bedroom that went to the apartment beside them. She could see what looked like crayon drawings on the walls, odd shapes and stick figures. It appeared to be a child's room. As she peered in, there was a quick movement which startled her. She pushed her eye tightly against the hole, trying desperately to see what was inside of the room. Suddenly, a shadow began rushing around the room in a panic. Straining to see what was casting this shadow, she was taken aback by a bright light coming through the hole. As she snatched her head away from the wall, the light dimmed. "What is this?" she thought, knowing that an elderly woman lived on the other side of them. Maybe a grandchild? Her mind was racing. She never knew old Lady Watson to ever have anyone over. Maggie composed herself to take another look. As she gazed through the hole at the drawings on the wall, she realized that these were depictions of Jacob's adventures and the places he would talk about while in his time machine. Then she saw it. The words, "Captain, help me," scribbled across the far wall in red crayon. It felt as though the room itself was beginning to panic. The lights began to flash violently. The sounds of scratching became frantic. Maggie, withdrawing from the hole, scooting backwards towards her son, who met her in the middle. Wrapping his arms around his mom, they both braced themselves as if awaiting an impact. As Maggie was deciding what to do next, something large slammed against the wall where the hole was, darkening the light that was flickering just seconds earlier. It was as though someone was pressed against the wall on the other side. They could hear what sounded like lungs struggling to expand. With Jacob in her arms, she bolted up off the closet floor and quickly exited the room. With her legs shaking from the experience, she descended the stairs with her son. Her animosity for this moment grew stronger with each step as she made her way to the landlord's apartment. In a series of violent thumps, her fist sent echoes through the empty corridor. The landlord quickly pulled his door open. His eyes danced across the scene that was now laid at his doorstep. A visibly distraught mother and her scared child. They were looking toward him as though it was now his job to make sense of everything he has yet to even know. In Maggie's overzealous and agitated state, she made an attempt to explain what had just happened. The landlord listened intently, but she could see the questioning look on his face, as if she were lying to him. "What, you don't believe me?" she yelled. "I can show you the hole in my son's closet." "No, that's not it," the landlord said, shaking his head. "Come, let me show you." He took her to old Lady Watson's apartment, where he began to explain. "It couldn't have possibly been anyone, because, you see, Miss Watson, she passed away 2 days ago. It was until now that no one could explain the drawings all over her walls. Miss Watson suffered from dementia, and she must have heard your son playing on the other side of that wall." Maggie walked around the apartment, looking at the drawings, and it was now clear that her son Jacob was never going on these trips alone. Miss Watson was there the whole time. The question on Maggie's mind, is Miss Watson still taking those trips?